record them. Hello, hello, hello. All of you out there in Keto Bikini Tribe land. It's your girl, Natalie, the Keto Bikini Pro. And I'm here with a special friend today in our space to share about her journey and the incredible work she's doing now with women in our community who are trying to change their lives and heal from the inside out. And it is my friend, Coach Mary Roberts. I'm not going to steal your thunder. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are and what you
All
do
right.
now.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. My name's Mary Roberts. I am 51 years old, and I have had eating disorders since I was probably a preteen. And, so all my life, basically, I have battled bulimia, compulsive eating, binge eating. And about a little over 9 years ago, I started a journey for the final time. Like my entire life, I always tried everything. We do anything and everything. We're willing to do whatever to try to lose weight. And so about a little over 9 years ago, a friend told me about the ketogenic diet. I was already familiar with low carb, knew I had a problem with carbs. And so I, of course, gave it a try because why not? I've tried everything else, right? So what happened was I lost over 100 pounds. I reversed my type 2 diabetes. I healed my asthma, sleep apnea, psoriasis. I stopped getting seasonal allergies. I stopped snoring. Like all these great things happened, and life just became better by eating real food. And I went through a period where I was really, really angry because here was like this what seemed to me simple solution, yet my entire life I was trying all these other things that all the experts said to do, none of which worked out for me. And simply, I always say that, changing the way I ate, keto did not fix my eating disorder, but it paved the way for me to start recovery because it lifted the brain fog and it made me feel physically and mentally better. And then, I had that mental wherewithal to do the work that needed to be done.
That right there is the underpinning. And this is one of the reasons I knew I had to have you on, because we align with this perspective that the general public, the general traditional methods of dieting, fitness, weight loss will all say you should not cut out a food group.
Yes.
All
That just really irritates me, that message, because it's so insulting, first of all, to say that, when people are saying that all foods fit, if they're saying that in a way, they say, oh, well, it's real simple, just moderation, eat everything in moderation, which is very insulting. Like, do you think that my entire life that I've battled, obesity and like this up and down thing with my weight, that I never tried moderation? Like, of course I did. So I wasn't capable of it because I had a food addiction, because I was disordered with food. And so, well, there's an analogy I heard one time, like telling someone to eat less and move more is like telling someone who's drowning to to breathe more, and something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like really stupid. Like, of course that's what we're trying to do, and it didn't work. So it really bugs me when people say that, because there's nothing, and they say it with the implication that, oh, it's disordered to give up, to cut out certain foods. They usually say a food group, which
Right.
they're so like they're meaning carbohydrates, and they're lumpy. They're not recognizing that there's plenty of carbohydrates that we shouldn't eat. So saying, I've been told by more than one person that because I don't eat a donut and walk away, that that's disordered. And it's so frustrating, because there's nothing wrong with stopping doing things that harm you. Like, there's all kinds of things that we do in life that we discover are harmful, right? And we stop doing it, and no one says, oh, that's crazy to not, like people alcoholics and drug addicts, nobody tells them it's nuts to cut out alcohol or drugs. But we get told that all the time.
100%. I always like to say that restriction is in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
a diet. There is no restrictive diet. It's the way
Right.
you feel about the diet. It's the way
Right.
you're looking at the things that you're choosing to eat and not eat. Many times with my clients, and I'm sure with yours, the thought process is can and can't have
Yeah.
versus this is my choice. I'm standing in my power. I'm deciding what to put in my body and what not to put in the body. And that to me is what creates restriction or deprivation rather than
Right.
the foods you're choosing to eat and not eat.
Well, and I think the word restriction, like it's used as a negative connotation, but if I am restricting myself from something that's harming me, that's not bad, right? That's not a bad thing if I don't continue to do things that harm me. Like we don't say, we restrict ourselves from running out into traffic. We don't restrict ourselves from putting our hand on the hot stove, right? We just don't do that crap because we know that it would hurt us. So I think that people have this like wrong idea of what restriction is. In fact, I had this conversation with a client this morning. She, had realized that she has a problem with pork rinds, which on its face, whatever, pork rinds are allowed. But she was buying the flavored ones and was like eating a whole bag at once and like maybe 3 or 4 bags a week, right? So she's like, I don't know if I'm ready to give it. It feels so restrictive. But she's been like struggling with reaching her goals and getting to a place of peace. So I had to stop her and I was like, okay, let's look at this. Like, take a different perspective. Not eating pork rinds, that's not restrictive. What's restrictive is not getting to your goal. What's restrictive is like being stuck on this loop where you're not getting what you want. I mean, that's the real restriction. People have said to me over the years, like they feel sorry for me that I don't eat cake on my birthday or these other things. And, oh, keto's so restrictive or carnivore so restrictive. No, it's not. What was restrictive was wearing size 20W fat pants, taking diabetes meds, taking high blood pressure meds, not being able to breathe when I got to the top of a flight of stairs, losing my breath when I bent over to tie my shoes, or better yet, not wearing tie shoes and doing flip flops so I didn't have to suffer the act of tying my shoes. Like all of those things were restricting me
Ah,
and keeping me from living life to the fullest.
I have heard you every time I hear you share that. I feel it. I feel this this power inside because that gets to the heart of it. What are you this this restrictive diet can be freedom. In
Yes,
so many ways,
absolutely.
it gave you more than it took away from you.
Yeah.
It took away
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
a
the thing.
momentary pleasure on your lips
Yeah.
for a lifetime of things now that you can do. What are some of the things now that you can do that still kind of amaze you today that if you look back, you couldn't do those
Gosh,
things before?
so many non-skill victories. One of my kids are older now, and I've been on this journey 9 years. But one of the things that compelled me to want to get healthier was, when I started this, my youngest was 10 years old and he was always wanting to like run around the backyard kicking the soccer ball or whatever. And I would last like 5 minutes and then I'd be like, I got to take a break. And one day he said to me, he was like, Mommy, you're always tired. And it was like a dagger, like right to my heart, right? And so stuff like that. So I have the capability, like if any of my slacker sons start having babies, I'll be able to keep up with grandbabies like in the yard and I'll do all that stuff. I go on a vacation and I don't have to like sleep off any like breakfast or lunch buffet food comas before I can go have fun. I can participate in things that I didn't before because I was, either too fat to do it, too tired to do it, too afraid to do it. So yeah, I mean, I just don't live life from the sidelines anymore. I could sit on the airplane without having to ask for the seatbelt extender. I can sit through a movie without feeling compelled to eat something. All kinds of things.
And the confidence that you have in the way you in putting clothes on. right? And feeling
Yeah.
good about yourself when you go out to, we just got back from KetoCon, both of us, and walking around that convention center all day, right? Standing on your
Yep.
feet all day
Yep.
and being social with all of these people, the level of confidence and um, presence that you can exude now in the way
Yeah.
you feel in your skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so I mean, life is just totally different. I don't sit on the sidelines anymore. I get to like fully participate.
That's powerful to hear. A lot of the time, I hear that keto causes eating disorders, right? Oh,
Yeah.
that restriction is going to cause you to then overeat.
Yeah. So I
And
just wrote about this in a post today. It's something I posted today, people saying stuff like that. And imagine like people saying, oh, well, the reason that you binge is because you're restricting. That's what they say.
yep,
Imagine someone telling an alcoholic that refraining from drinking alcohol is going to trigger them to drink. Like, it's the
love that
dumbest
one.
thing,
It's the
like
perfect
nobody
analogy.
does that. But somehow us getting rid of our drug foods is gonna trigger us. And really, and there are people who believe that and maybe manifest that, but it's because they have the wrong paradigm and they're not seeing food for its real purpose, and they're still using it for purposes other than hunger, which I believe is what food's for. And sometimes people come at me about that, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't enjoy our food. Like, we should enjoy our food. It's perfectly fine to like take a bite of something and be like, oh, this is so good. Like, it tastes so good. Like,
Yes.
who doesn't bite into a steak and set, oh, this is so good. It's okay to enjoy our food, and we should, but it shouldn't be like the center of our universe. It shouldn't be the thing that we turn to when we're bored, when we are stressed, when we are angry, upset, or happy. Like, you know, food is like, we have turned it into like like a way to like manage emotions, and it's not a way to manage emotions. We think that it's helping, but it's really not doing for us what we think it's going to do.
Okay, something you just shared, and that whole description, you're separating food as a drug and food as nourishment for our bodies and enjoyment and all of those things. The drug foods, I think that's such a key point, because when people say that getting over an eating disorder is harder than getting over alcoholism, is because they say, oh, well, you can't avoid food like you can avoid
Right.
drugs. The fact is,
Yeah.
you're drawing a delineation between foods that are drugs and being used as drugs and foods that are
Right.
food. The difference between those two.
Right. I always want to ask like the people that say that, it's like there's no middle ground, right? It's either eat all the things or eat nothing. Well, those are not the only two options. There's a happy medium where, we can eat the things that are nourishing, and we can not eat the things that are mentally and physically harming us. We don't have to have everything on the menu.
There's permission to restrict the foods that are causing you harm. Restrict the drugs, give up the
Exactly.
drugs. Okay, that is
Yeah.
a perfect segue into the real reason why I resonate with you so deeply, and everything you share always touches me. Beyond the health and the physical changes that you've gotten, which are massive in and of themselves, you went on an internal healing journey, and that's really what you focus your coaching around now. So I would love to hear a little bit about that. How did you address the bigger issues, right? The internal healing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a long process of like a combination of trial and error, willpower, discipline, surrender, grief, all of these things. And when I started over 9 years ago, I knew that I had a problem with junk foods and stuff. So in the beginning, I didn't call what I was doing what I call it now. Like today, I say I'm food sober. That I'm on this journey of pursuing food sobriety. And I was doing that in the beginning, but I didn't name it that. And in the beginning, my mantra, my thing was, I'm not going to cheat, because I always knew cheating was the beginning of the end. It's how every diet I ever did ended. It
Mhm.
all ended with like me, I'm just going to have this one time, this one thing, right? And it never worked out for me. And so in the beginning it was that. And so it, I really, in the beginning, even though I was feeling better mentally and physically because of the way I was choosing to eat, I still had that mental, like 24/7 obsession with food, thinking about it all the time. And I had to use sheer stinking willpower in the beginning not to eat the things that I knew I couldn't. I was just like determined to not cheat. And that's like my daily thing. So in the beginning, that first year, I cried a lot. I would dream about binging. Like
Wow.
I would wake up like panicked that I had blown it, that I had binged. It would have these food dreams. Um, and a lot of crying over, literally, when I say I cried about Hershey bars and cheesecake, I did. Like I would be in Costco, and one of my old, binge foods was Costco cheesecake. I've told this story before. Like, and I would be in there and I would see it, and I would want so bad, so badly to just buy it and like just go for it, but I just wouldn't. And I would get to the car and I like literally just cry with my head on the steering wheel because I wanted it so badly. And then after doing that a few times, I started like having these like conversations with myself, which now I know was dialogue with my voice of sabotage, right? Like this back and forth. The voice would be like, you can have it just this once. And I would come back with, no, I can't. Like every time, I'm incapable of eating one piece. I'll eat that whole thing in 24 hours. I can't do it. Right. I would just like speak the truth, and that's how it went, like over and over, and eventually it became easier. And I started to like remind, like, I've had all these conversations with myself, like when the voice of sabotage would be like, well, you're missing out, I would say, that's not even true. Like I've had 1,000+ Hershey bars in my life, I bet. Like I've had them before. I know what they taste like. I know what they smell like. I am not missing out. That's a lie. I can check that off my list of something that I've experienced. So it's a lie that I'm missing out. So, like, those were the kinds of conversations I would have with myself. I would open the pantry and see all like the cereals and the junk foods that the rest of my family still ate when I started. And I'd open it up and the voice would be like, oh, wouldn't a bowl of Cocoa Pebbles be great right now? And I'd be like, no, that food doesn't even belong to me. That belongs to Brett, Nolan, and Bradley. Like I would just physically, literally say that out loud. That is not my food. And it just like went on like that. And eventually things like became easier. And I started to, the weight kept like coming off. I started feeling better. I breathed easier. And I noticed that I was happier. I was also one of those people who like anger was my go-to emotion. And so if anyone in my house pissed me off, I was a yeller and a slammer of doors and cabinets. And probably about 6, 7 months in, one day it occurred to me, like I thought, man, you know what? I feel pretty good. I haven't yelled at anybody in a while. Like my brain just felt better because it just wasn't poisoned with all of the stuff. And I didn't know at the time that, like probably my brain was like really loving the ketones and everything. But I know looking back now, but like just everything started to change. I became happier. And because I became happier, I became a better wife, a better mother, a better friend. And just everything, it changed. When you feel good, your perspective on everything changes. And it's also easier to see, like I could see more clearly the things that were harmful to me and the things that were good for me. And I was able to, because I wasn't bogged down with all the toxins from a toxic diet, I could see clearly those things and make better decisions.
Yes. And that feeling when you are still stuck in your addiction and you're struggling and you're maybe cheating and hiding things, and a lot of
Oh
that
yeah.
anger and a lot of those mood swings with family members, they're coming from this place of, you're out of integrity with yourself, and
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
manifesting this way outward toward other people. So it's so powerful
Yeah.
that you share that part of it, that your relationships get better. This whole career you've created for yourself now, you get better in that. And even in probably your past career, any of the things that you do outside of yourself and outside of your fat loss journey or the health journey, all of life can improve because you're bringing your best
Yeah.
into it now.
Yeah. When your cognitive function improves, like your opportunities seem, endless.
I have to touch on something when you talked about the cheesecake. What came to mind now is okay, because I started my journey, about 11 years ago. You started yours 9 years ago. Back then, there were no keto foods on the shelves. There were no
Right.
keto cheesecake to buy, the enlightened cheesecake and the rebel ice cream and all that stuff didn't exist then. So
Yeah.
did you ever recreate standard American diet junk foods to fit into your ketogenic lifestyle? Or were you just like cold turkey, I'm not doing the sweetened things?
So that's a great question. My first year, by all means, I was probably what we would call now dirty keto, because my mindset at that time was, as long as I'm not eating like the real thing, that it would, that it was okay. But what I realized about, I don't know, 9 months in or so, like one of the things that I would eat in the beginning, almost every night, I would have a Atkins bar. That was like my dessert, my treat, because in my brain, me and Ed had this dialogue of, you have to, if you don't eat this, then you're obviously going to choose Oreos. And I know now that like I could have opted for nothing, right? But when you're still in it like that, you can't see that. And so I think that there's a place for those kinds of things for people, because I was thinking about this earlier today because somebody said something on a podcast about like the recreation of stuff. Like if I hadn't had that option, I don't know that I honestly don't know that I would have made it. I think, for a lot of people, these things can be like transition foods, bridge foods,
Yeah.
because certainly, I mean, making keto brownies or something is better than Duncan Hines, right? But as far as like health wise, it's a better choice. But mentally, not so much, because you make keto brownies, you still have the potential to eat the whole tray, and people do.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for that stuff. But when my process through that was one day, so I had found, you're right, like 9 years ago, 11 years ago, every like keto dessert pretty much tasted like cardboard. Like if you could even find a recipe, it was like cardboard. They have come a long way with the way they do stuff. But I had found, I don't even know where I found it, but I had found this low carb blueberry muffin recipe. It made 6 blueberry muffins, and like I would make it every week. And then finally one day I was like, because I even though doing some of the things I was doing, like having the blueberry muffins or eating the Atkins bar every night, besides that, I was eating mostly like bacon and eggs and hamburger and salads and stuff. It was, mostly real food. I just had those couple things that were still in there. And one day I was like thinking how I really wish I could get to a place where I just wasn't thinking about food all the time, or where I didn't feel like I had to have this to live. And I had this again, like another conversation, with myself over these blueberry muffins. I'm like, okay, yeah. So the recipe I found, they were 2 carbs each, make 6 muffins. And so what do you think my brain does? Oh, 2 times 6, 12 carbs for all 6 muffins. No big deal. It's only 12 carbs. But then I was like, Mary, surely it's not normal to eat 6 muffins at once. Like that's binging, really. Like and so I decided that when I had that conversation with myself, I'm like, you know what, I'm just not going to make these anymore. And then one day I also decided, like I was about to eat an Atkins bar. And again, I was like, what? I don't even want this. Like at that point, it was like habitually like eating it for my dessert. And I realized I didn't even want it. I wasn't even desiring it. So I decided not to eat those, and I've never eaten one again. And so it's just like this process, like as you grow and change and feel better, you get these you have these new awarenesses and get a new perspective on things, then you just change your behavior. So today, no, I don't. If I make something, it's not for me, it's for my family, because they are like on board off and on.
Okay. Yep.
So yeah.
the progression continues, right? You do
Yes.
it long enough. And this is kind of getting to that social aspect of where people really struggle with the opinions of others, or like
Mm,
their family being in the household and doing something differently, which I
yeah.
have to commend you is you have really gone through the gamut of probably every struggle that anyone can think of going through, you've been through. Doing
Yeah.
this when you're the only one in the household doing it makes it 10 times harder. But you're a great example that it can be done. And then
Mhm.
if you continue on this journey, people will start to ask you questions, they'll start to get curious, and they'll start to open up to this idea inside your household and outside your household.
Yeah.
So that's another testament right there that they're open.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what happened. Like 8 years ago, like at my 1 year keto anniversary, I shared my story online, and I only shared it because my friend Brian had the Keto Evangelist podcast, and he asked me like for my 1 year, like to come on and tell my story at that point. And so I put my story online to share, that, hey, I'm going to be on this podcast. And like immediately, like it just like was one of those things, like it just blew up. I would get like some weeks darn near 100 messages from people that
Huh.
had seen like my story on Facebook or whatever. And it was crazy that people were so interested. And then that's, kind of how it started, like me, starting to share more, and sharing with other people like what I did, and how I did it.
So is that what brought you into coaching?
Yeah. So the coaching didn't happen until a couple of years later, like in 2016. My friend Brian said, "Hey, like, what do you think about being a coach?" And I was like, at first, I've come a long way with this too. At first, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't have, I'm not like an expert or anything. He's like, Mary, people message you every day and you share what you've done. And then they come back later and tell you they've lost 10 pounds, 12 pounds, whatever. Like, he's like, you know how to help people get started. And then my next thing was like, well, I'd feel bad for charging people. And then he gave me this big lecture about how that works. And I got over that. So yeah, so I started coaching in 2016, and definitely my coaching has evolved. And I've since then went and, got a few different certifications, and I'm still doing some because it like becomes a new addiction. Let's get
Yep.
certified in this or that, right?
You should,
But
and I think all good practitioners should always stay up to date because there's always new information coming out.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that's fantastic. You're a lifelong learner, and you probably are always running into things, as I do, that your clients bring to you that are new. And oh,
yeah,
I want to drill down on this. I want to go down this
yeah.
rabbit hole, and there's always more to learn. None of us will ever know it all. So that's beautiful.
That's
Tell
right.
me a little bit about where you're coaching now and what that looks like.
So I have a website, ketocoachmary.com, and I offer private coaching. I sometimes don't always have, spots, how that goes. I don't always have spots for that, but I also have a group that I do with another coach. It's the Meaty Chicks. And so that's a great place, like for people that are like new to keto or carnivore, and they're just still learning kind of how to navigate it, and what to eat, what not to eat, that's kind of like that kind of type of support group. So I've really tried to, like, the last couple of years, streamline my coaching to where my passion is, and that is like helping people overcome ed. I can do the macros and how to keto, but that's not really where my passion lies. I think that keto is a great vehicle and I can help people learn that, but I really want to help people get food sober because that's what people struggle with. And I think it's so much more common than we think, like so many people don't even realize that their issue is that they're disordered with food. They think that, oh, I just, haven't found the right diet, or I haven't tried hard enough. I haven't really like got all my ducks in a row and really given it my all. Like
Yeah.
there's these excuses for like why, right? But the real reason is they have this voice of sabotage that is in charge instead of them. And that's what I want to help people with, is like taking back the reins from the voice of sabotage.
That is everything in this journey. I always like to say you have to challenge every thought you think. And your illustration earlier of how you did that dialogue is literally the end all be all when it comes to this stuff. Just committing to having those conversations on a regular basis
Yeah.
and not letting those thoughts go by. Or you'll
Yeah.
find yourself in the bottom of a thing of keto brownies again.
Right. You have to tackle it, because I think so many people just try to ignore it, but they'll just be like, no, no, like they try to stuff it down. They don't respond. They just think they can ignore it. And a lot of people like skate by on the high. Like when you start keto or carnivore, most people in the beginning, they experience that like burst of energy, the euphoria. They can't believe how good they feel. The weight is dropping off. So they're just on this, they're on the honeymoon, right? They're
Yeah.
on the high. And then eventually that starts to wear off. And if you haven't started to like do the work, and that high and that excitement wears off, and then something stressful happens, then that's when people like immediately turn back to their own. I'm sure you've seen this online a million times, or had people come to you and say, hey, you know what, I was doing really good, I was keto for like 2 years, and then I don't know what happened.
Yep.
Right. Or the pandemic happened, or my dog died, or my husband left me, or what, like something happens, right? And they go back to their old ways of dealing with food, and they see it as like a character flaw in themselves, rather than this is a disorder that I have. This is not a character flaw. It's because I have this, eating disorder. And most people don't see it. They think eating disorder is anorexia or bulimia. And if it doesn't fit into one of those two boxes, then they're just, they're lazy, they're undisciplined, blah, blah, blah. They heap blame on themselves.
And that's never going to help. It's never going to lead to recovery. That
Right.
that beating yourself up. There was something so profound that I heard on one of your podcast episodes that rocked my world. After all the years of my own recovery and journey and becoming a pro athlete and a coach and all of that, you said something about being a dry drunk versus
Mm-hmm.
sober, and
Yeah.
the difference in those two things. And that hit me to my core.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like what I was just talking about, that honeymoon period, when you're like skating on the high and everything feels good and easy, but you're not doing any internal work. Like that's like the dry drink. Like they don't drink, they're not drinking anymore, or like us, like we're not eating all the junk anymore, but we haven't done any of the internal work to really make that leap to like, okay, I'm experiencing sobriety, like mentally and physically.
I think that's I want to put that challenge out to those who are listening. If that resonated with you, sit with those thoughts and sit with the feelings that come up around that. Because, like I said, even in my situation, I thought, wow, so many of the competition preps that I've done and the challenges, if you're one of these people who's chasing after a challenge, always joining a challenge, always doing something to hold you accountable, and you can be good for so many weeks or 31 days or whatever it is, and then you always dive off the deep end and then have to get back on track, this may be something to look at for you. Maybe you're not doing the inner work and you're just
Yeah.
always focusing on the foods you're putting in your body or committing to a food plan for a short period of time. That is not what's going to lead to long-time healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of the, when it comes to like food addiction and eating disorders, part of the disorder is that excitement of starting over, right? Of trying something new. Like anytime we do that, we get this little bit, at least like a little bit of a high, right? We're excited to start that. And that's part of our disorder, is like that staying on that roller coaster, being on and off. And definitely the way to get off of that and to just find peace, which is hard for a lot of people because peace is boring, right? We don't have peace is boring. And, so people struggle with that. And so I think that, doing that deep dive, looking at what are all the reasons that I've used food inappropriately, what are all the reasons, why I've used food for reasons other than hunger, and looking at honestly, like, what do I believe that food is going to do for me? And does it really do that? What is it keeping me from? Right? Like, I think so many people get wrapped up, like we were talking earlier, so many people get wrapped up in like what they're not going to get, instead of like, what can I get? Like, where can this take me? What is life? Like, one of the questions in my food freedom program, there's daily journaling. One of the questions is, what does a life of food sobriety look like for you? What does your life look like if you're food sober? I really want people to think about that. How is it going to be different? How do you think? How do you feel? How do you look? How do you dress? How do you carry yourself? What are your relationships? What job do you have? Like, what changes when you have that peace that food sobriety brings?
I love that you're getting clear on your vision of where you're going and how life can be without this thing. If I could tell you, I don't even know how many hours of my life were taken away by
Mhm.
my bulimia.
Yeah.
The planning of it, the
Yeah.
executing it, and then the
Mhm.
recovering from every single episode
Yeah.
was exhausting. And it took everything away from what I'm doing now. I
Yeah.
couldn't I couldn't be fully there for my clients. I couldn't be fully there for myself. I didn't have a relationship with another human being. I hid away from people. It just took everything away. And when we start to
Yeah.
see what our life looks like with our food addiction to what our life can look like without, it starts changing the game. It's so
Absolutely.
powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to hear what is your piece of advice for women who are just getting started? What is the very first thing you would tell them to do?
I tell them this is not a diet. Weight loss is not recovery. And even though weight loss may be your goal, and that is the goal of most people that come to me, they want to lose weight, but we have to have this like hard conversation in the beginning that weight loss is not recovery. You're not on a diet. And one of the reasons that so many people struggle in the beginning is because not only are they like giving up their drug foods cold turkey, right? They are then adding under eating on top of that because they have this lifetime of diet mentality that, less food is better. So they're cutting out their drug foods, they're experiencing withdrawal, and then they're not eating enough to, you know, ease that withdrawal. And so that's like the biggest thing is we're just going to focus on eating nutrient dense foods. And will straight up tell people like you may feel like you're binging in the beginning, but if you've got to eat 4 hamburger patties and 4 slices of cheese and some bacon so that you don't go off the deep end, and go on a carb binge, then that's what you do. Because you and I both know that when you are eating protein like that and healthy fats, you're eventually your body has no choice but to feel satiated, right? And the cravings go away. You feel this sense of calmness, and then you can proceed. So if you can get through that, I think withdrawal for most people is probably like real physical withdrawal is probably like 4 to 6 days on average. And if you could
100%.
get past that, then you could we could take that next step. But you're not on a diet, and so it's okay to eat. You just want to eat the right things.
I love that. I love that weight loss is not sobriety. That mantra right there is everything. When you can let go of that and focus on the bigger issue, right? Because
Yeah,
as much real food as you can eat in a day is not going to equal what you were doing to your body when you were binging.
that's right. Yeah.
Ah, thank you so much for that. So powerful. All right. So before we wrap up, I got to have some fun and ask a little something about Mary. Um,
Okay.
so, pun intended. There are some things I
So
know about you that the wide world may not. And this is, I happen to know you have a killer shoe collection and a really great sense of style. So I'd love to hear about that and about your hobbies, like who Mary is outside the weight loss and outside the food.
so I do have a love affair with shoes. It was actually, one of the things that drove me, so like another one of the things that I did in the beginning, and I was just talking about this with my group last night, is the power of visualization. And so I have always loved clothes and shoes, but when I got to a point of my weight and being obese and morbidly obese, that I fell into this like depression, and I had like the same 2 pairs of shorts and all these like size 2X t-shirts that I would just try to hide behind. And I couldn't wear any of the things that I wanted to wear because you can't when you're like that. And so that was one of the things that like drove me in the beginning, as I would visualize like the clothes that I wanted to wear and the shoes that I wanted to wear. So I have at this time I have 140 pairs of shoes. That's my little fun fact. And it's only 140 because this past year I actually did a purge and got rid of some shoes that I hadn't worn in a long time and all that. So yeah, so I love, shoes. I have way too many clothes. I collect Ray Dunn mugs for those are like those
Ooh.
ceramic mugs with like the words on them, it'll say like queen or slay or fighter or whatever. I have like over 100 of those. And
I think
so I
I've
love to
seen
drink
those.
my coffee out of those.
I think I've seen those in your Instagram stories from time.
Yes, like I'll pick up, like I literally like when I making my coffee, I'm like, what do I feel like today? What do I need today? Like some days, like when I'm really tired or whatever, I'll pick one. It says adulting,
I
or if
love
I'm,
it.
particularly, I don't know, like I have one that says fighter, and so I'll pick like a word, like what do I want my word to be today, and I drink my coffee out of those. But I mean, other than that, like I don't. I'm a reader. I love to read. And so I do a lot of that. Like if and when I have downtime, I like to read. I listen to podcasts, and I not always like, I do like some entertaining one, like outside of like the health thing. I'll listen to like true crime podcasts, or sometimes politics, but they usually make me mad, so I skip that. um, but yeah, like I just live a finally, like, my life is peaceful. I travel a lot. I love to travel. And so that's something that, that's a totally different experience for me today, traveling. Like my travels used to center around, where am I going to go to eat, right? Like we would literally plan trips, and we used to watch that show, like diners, drive-ins and dives or whatever. And I'm like, are any of those on our route? Like everything's centered around food. So vacations are totally different now and a lot more fun. But yeah, that's me. Like I'm, fairly boring. And I'm like routine, I do like I have my routines, and the only time I break out of it is when I travel.
I love it though. It's a full life. We like to say we're boring, but to certain people who may not have the same interests, but for those who do, that's not a boring life at all. It's
Yeah.
a full life, and it's a life that's fuller than what you had before. And that's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
I enjoy it. And that's like I think that's all that matters. I heard someone say one time that time wasted doing something you enjoy isn't wasted time at all.
100%. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's one more thing I want to touch on, and I'm sorry I did not preface this question in advance, so it may be a surprise. But I know you're unapologetic, and I want to share it because I feel the same way. You had a skin removal surgery.
Mm-hmm. I did.
I want to hear how that's going, how you feel now versus how you did before, what your experience was like, and what you would say to women who are feeling ashamed or insecure about having surgery, either bariatric surgery, weight loss
Mm-hmm.
surgery, or skin removal surgery, or any kind of plastic surgery that they're thinking about getting because
Yeah.
of fearing how other people would what other people would think about that.
Yeah. I definitely had that battle of like worrying what other people would think. And I have been wanting this, since like 2016 was like the first time I thought about it. And it took me, and I just had it done 8 months ago. So there was a lot of, stuff in between. And I waited to get it when I did, one, because it's very expensive, but also I, for me personally, I wanted to be in a place of recovery where I wasn't doing it for the wrong reason. Like I see people like when I was researching the surgery, and after I'd had it scheduled and stuff, I was in a couple of like Facebook groups for tummy tucks and stuff. And there were so many women in there saying that they were doing this to get a jump start on, helping them like start their to do better, be better, eat better, work out, right? They were using it for that. And I was at a place where like I've already done all those things, like I've gotten my relationship with food right. I have, worked on my fitness. I've done all the like metabolic health changes and stuff. And I just was at this point where no amount of fasting or gym hours put in was going to give me the look that I wanted. Like I felt really good, and all my health markers were all great, but I still had this like apron of skin and subcutaneous fat. My visceral fat was like under 1 pound, according to DEXA, which is pretty decent. And so I just had all this like still subcutaneous and that apron that I could like lift it up.
Yep.
And it just bothered me immensely. And like I could see it in my clothes. And so I just decided, that I was at a place where I could do it. And I have mostly, I think I would say like 99% of the response that I've gotten to it, and because I shared like the whole thing too, has been good. But there's been a couple of people who were like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just fasted. You could use the fascia blaster. There's this thing called cool sculpting. Like everyone like giving me like their opinions. And then several weeks ago, when I did an episode on my podcast about body image, I ended up doing a part 2 because somebody had messaged me and it was like, how do you reconcile like you talking about body image and accepting your body where you're at, and how do you reconcile that with the fact that you had a tummy tuck? And so I was like, okay, well that's a fair question. And really like my answer is I wasn't doing it like as I didn't do it like as a shortcut for like weight loss or anything. Like I haven't even stepped on the scale since the last time I weighed myself was the morning of my surgery.
Wow.
And I haven't stepped back on the scale because for years, what I've said was, if I could just get rid of this, I'd be happy, right? Like we say those dumb things like, and I wanted that. I just want that to be true. And I know with my history of ed and my relationship with the scale, that if I were to step on the scale and it didn't meet my expectations, that it would just start this like dialogue with ed that I don't want to have. And so the surgery for me was, my reward for all my hard work, because I feel like I've done all the work, but it didn't result in the look that I wanted. And even though I say this, like we should accept our bodies like where they're at, but that doesn't mean that we don't that we shouldn't want to change them. Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to change your body, as long as we go about it in a way that's not like completely disordered. I was very fearful about the surgery. I've never had surgery in my life. So I was actually really scared of anesthesia because it was something I had never done. And I did start, like, as my surgery date kept getting closer, I did start to question. I'm like, do you really want to do this? Like, what if you die? What if you're one of the stories where you die during this surgery? Like your brain just like goes there. And of course, it all worked out fine, but I have no regrets about it. I'm super happy with how it looks. And I would do it again.
I love it. And just the way that you carry yourself and your pictures and the things you shared throughout that journey afterwards, I saw a difference in you. I saw you glowing. And it,
Thank
to me,
you.
it was a representation that I've done all this hard work. If anything, it was your celebration. It was your reward to yourself, right? How
Yeah.
many times have you done a diet and then rewarded yourself with the junk
Right.
you gave up and then ended up right back where you started?
Yep. So
There's
many
there's
times.
a beautiful way of rewarding yourself for that hard work, because you did the work and you
Yeah.
got rid of all that body fat and you got yourself into this healthy place. You deserve to feel fully confident in your body. And I agree. I'm 100%. I feel that this concept of health at any size, I'm not even going to get into it because I will go on a rant, but this concept of, loving ourselves where we are does not mean we stay there.
That's right.
I believe strongly in constant self improvement. That's what we're here on this earth to do. And improving yourself does not mean that you don't love yourself. It actually
That's
means it
right.
is a form of self love. And we
Yeah.
wouldn't know, just like you were explaining about the drug, the drugs and looking at food like that and the restriction like that. We don't tell people, don't educate yourself about finances. Don't get a higher education. Don't improve in your work. Don't improve in your education. Like, we don't say that. But when it comes to their bodies, it's, oh, you just shouldn't want to change anything. You should just stay the way.
Right. Right. You're beautiful the way you are. Well, thanks, but I don't, I'm not feeling like my best and I want to feel better. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. All right. Share with us where we can find you on your socials and your website again and all of that so that ladies who need this kind of help can work with you.
So my website is ketocoachmary.com, and on Facebook and Instagram, I'm Keto Mary 71. And then my podcast is currently on Spotify and Google because I am not tech savvy and I can't figure out how to get it on Apple. I will figure it out. But my podcast is called Food Freedom. And
Food
it's on,
Freedom Podcast is amazing. Check it out.
you know,
Reach out to Mary if you're on this journey and it feels like a fit for you. Connect with her, dive into her group, get some private coaching if you need it. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your story and coming on, spending this
thank
time.
you.
And you get to see Mary and me on the low carb cruise if you're joining us next month.
Yes. Yes. So
Great.
excited about that. I'm ready. I'm ready
I'm so ready.
to
I
sit
need
out
to
by the pool.
tan on this winter skin.
Yeah.
All right, Mary, have a wonderful day.